PC, Brad Vinyl Guy here. I promised in my last video I'd give you an update on the record fair that I went to the weekend before last at Doncaster in South Yorkshire. They run the fair about once a quarter, and it's quite a big fair, one of the biggest fairs in Yorkshire, and you get all sorts of people selling there. Some private sellers, some guys who always do record fairs, some record shop owners, the sort of thing you'd probably get the world over, and there's a good combination of stuff there. Some really expensive dealers that sell some really top rate stuff, some that are at the bottom of the range, some in between, people who sell a combination of both. So yeah, it's always a good one to go to, and I always get a good stack of records when I go there. And I got quite a big pile this time, so I'm going to work my way through them as quick as I can. Big thank you for everyone that subscribed, or subscribed since my last video. Anyone that I subscribed to, I do watch all your videos and I'm really enjoying them, learning a lot myself, and picking up some good tips on what to buy. And if I like what I hear about what you say about them, I'll have a listen online as well, and I've been buying a few things recently, so thanks for your recommendations, invaluable. And I'll make another video in the next few days about the stuff that I brought recently, and hopefully you'll see some of the stuff that you've recommended in there as well, or that you've shown. So cheers, and thanks for all the comments you've left. I always appreciate the comments, I always reply to all my comments, so again, thank you very much. First album we're going to start with is a band called A House from Dublin in Ireland, and this is their second album called I Want Too Much. A few famous faces on the front cover there, including Al Capone. They're kind of an indie rock album, an indie rock group. Have been produced in the past by Edwyn Collins. This part of this album was made at the Abbey Road Studios in London. And they're kind of bittersweet lyrics, some kinds a bit on the sarcastic side, but always a good listen, guitar indie. Okay, next up we've got Jefferson Airplane, Surrealistic Pillow. Bit of an obvious one, I suppose. Everyone has this one, don't they, really? But I don't. And it's one that you can't get that cheap here in the UK. I know I watched a video quite some time ago by Dots and Loops, and he talked about records that you could find in $1 bins. And I know culturally vinyl's very different here than it is from the United States, and things that we can get here really cheap, you can't always get very cheap over there, and vice versa. And you're probably looking at £15 plus for any version of Surrealistic Pillow that's in sort of decent condition, Bible condition. And this was particularly interesting to me, not only because of it's an album I haven't got, but because it's a 2-disc French version of this one. It's a twofer. And on the other side we've got After Bathing at Baxter's. So both albums included in here. Non-gatefold, unfortunately. I don't like that so much with double albums, but it happens, doesn't it? But I thought it was interesting because of that, and it's probably cheaper to buy this than it would be to get an original or even later pressing of a Surrealistic Pillow. This only cost me about a tenner. So nice to have that one. And on the subject of Jeffersons, later incarnation Jefferson Starship, Red Octopus, which I understand is their biggest selling album. And this has got the big hit on it, Miracles, which I think was a number 3 hit in the Billboard charts. And this one's from 1975. And that's a UK pressing. Really beat up cover on this one. Go Champs Go. Quite rare. Not necessarily having a lot of value, but it's not one that you see too often in the UK. And this is an original UK pressing, and as you can see, the sleeves in a really bad way. But I wanted it because it's got tequila on it, which you all know and love, and a nice purple London label. And the record is in fantastic condition, which is hard to believe when you look at the sleeve. God knows what they've done with it, where it's been stored, but I did a quick needle drop on it to listen to the first side, and it plays really, really, really well. So, nice one with that one. Next, Loving Spoonful, their second album called Daydream from 1965, and this is original UK pressing of this one. And this one comes on the Pink Pie International label. Again, nice condition in terms of the record. Up next, we've got one that I found quite interesting. A group that you may be aware of, may not be, called the Humble Bums. And represented on a painting on the front of here, we've got Billy Connolly, stand-up comedian from Glasgow, and Jerry Rafferty, who you'll all know, who was a big solo artist obviously in the UK in the back end of the 70s, early 80s, and part of Steelers Wheel. And this is the second pressing of this album from 1969, I think. And the Humble Bums were sort of folky, bluegrassy group who started off in the pubs and clubs in Scotland in the mid-60s. A guy called Tam Harvey and Billy Connolly were the original members. Then Joe Rafferty joined, and then Tam Harvey left because he wasn't sure about the musical direction that the group were taking. And then Billy Connolly and Joe Rafferty parted the waves eventually in the early 70s, and they went on to record solo stuff of their own. Billy Connolly, obviously a stand-up comedian of some note. Joe Rafferty went on to make an album called Can I Have My Money Back, which is one of my favourite Joe Rafferty albums. Then he joined Steelers Wheel, who had a big hit with Stuck in the Middle with You. So yeah, that was a nice one to pick up, and with it being a second pressing, it's quite obvious when you look, because it's got a really lovely label, this one. Really impressed by that one. The first label was quite a plain looking label, but quite a nice one on that one. And I also picked up another Joe Rafferty album while I was there. This is self-titled, but it had a very different sleeve from the UK pressing. This is a United States pressing. Joe Cocker with a little help from my friends, another US pressing. This is on A&M Records, and this had a nice inner sleeve with it. I've got a lot of records, A&M Records. Never seen that in a sleeve before. Maybe it's a common one in the United States, but not in the UK. Seen that one shown a couple of times on the VC recently as well. Next up, a very well-known one, Wonderwall music by George Harrison. Got this one in quite nice condition. This is again an early pressing, 1968. So it's the one that's got stereo on the bottom right-hand corner. I'll show you that one quickly, those who are interested. And you'll all know about this one. I know there's a masses of George Harrison fans and Beatles fans and people who are making great videos about those two people on here. The band, the Beatles and George Harrison. And this was the first solo album by a Beatle, and the first one on Apple, first record on Apple. And it was a soundtrack to the film Wonderwall, which was debuted at Cannes Film Festival in 1968. Psychedelic film about a guy looking through a wall at a model. That's the sort of basic premise of the film. And that was attended by George Harrison and his wife when it debuted at Cannes Film Festival. And that's one of the few George Harrison albums I didn't have, so it was nice to pick that one up. This was probably my second most exciting thing that I bought on the day that I thought. And this is from Nowhere by the Trogs, their first album from 1966, and this is an original mono pressing. I was really pleased with this one because it's in great condition, really, really happy with this one. Known for the big hit Wild Thing, which is the first song on side one on here. Took them a while to get going in the United States because they didn't go there till a couple of years after this album came out in 1968. They went over there. And a big influence on garage bands in the UK and the US. And punk in the UK. Iggy Pop was highly influenced by the Ramones, and the Buzzcocks used to do one of their songs in their early days at their gigs. REM covered Love Is All Around on their MTV Unplugged album, and obviously that went on to be a massive hit in the UK by Wet 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 in the mid-90s, and number one in the UK for about 3 or 4 months, and in the end they deleted the single because it was just not moving, just number one forever. Reg Presley, who wrote the song, the lead singer, made an awful lot of money out of that record, out of the rights to that, because he was a sole writer. Spent an awful lot of that money on writing books and research into crop circles. But I always wondered with the Trogs if they were the first group to sort of have their surname named after the band. You know, like the Ramones were Dee Dee Ramone, Johnny Ramone, etc., etc. Well, the Trogs were right up there at the start, because on the back of here it mentioned them being called Ronnie Trog, Chris Trog, Pete Trog, Reg Trog. So I don't know, were they the forerunners of that kind of thing? Possibly. And this is on your standard Fontana label, but yeah, like I said, original mono pressing, so really, really nice. Okay, next up, some compilations. If you've seen my recent videos, you know I like a good compilation of bands who I don't have that much stuff by. Always a good way of getting into their music, but this one is Woodstock. And obviously, again, most of you will know this one. Big selling soundtrack as it was. This is the original 1970 UK pressing. A great lineup of bands on it. And I was staggered to get this one. I mean, I've seen it obviously a lot in the UK before, but it was £3. And there's some marks on the vinyl, but I did a needle drop on it. I played one side all the way through that had some marks on it. Not one click. It played absolutely beautiful. So I was really pleased to get this one for £3. It's an album I've always wanted, and for £3, you've got to have it, haven't you, really? More compilations. 20 Greatest Hits by the Shangri-Las. This is a 1984 German compilation. A double album by The Animals, House of the Rising Sun. This is another German import. See some nice sort of German import stickers on the front there. And nice gatefold, hopefully you can see all of that. And it's got all the big hits on it. House of the Rising Sun, obviously. A couple of John Lee Hooker songs, Boom Boom. Dimples are also on here. But yeah, nice clean condition. Also picked up Greg and Dwayne Allman album, another compilation, early 70s compilation by them. A couple of albums by the Louvin Brothers, self-titled one here, and one from a series of records. That's the first one there. I love the Louvin Brothers, you know, tight harmonies, beautifully played country songs, but the harmonies are just to die for, really. And I've got quite a few Louvin Brothers albums. You can generally pick them up fairly cheap, apart from Satan Is Real, obviously, which is it's quite an expensive one. I've got a repress of that one. You all know Satan Is Real. Okay, this was quite an interesting one. A group called The Chosen Few. This album's the only album they made from 1969. They'd released 4 earlier singles that came out before this album that aren't on here, and they were sort of more garagey then, but this is quite poppy, almost soulful, really, I'd say. And they toured with Three Dog Night. And they also opened for The Who. Not many of these were pressed. I think it was pressed in the United States, and possibly Brazil, I think, and Canada maybe. So quite a rare one, and great sleeve. Okay, this my probably most exciting one that I bought on the day, I would say, would be this one, the Pretty Things second album, Get the Picture. And particularly drawn to this one because I thought that I didn't really recognise the cover. It's not one that I've seen before, and this is an original Dutch pressing from 1965, and the German pressing also had the same cover as this, but the UK and other pressings were very different. And normally, I know this goes for good money, especially the UK pressing. I was aware of it going for 60, 70, 80 pounds. The Dutch one's worth about 50 from what I can work out from Discogs. And I saw it there for 10 quid, and I just couldn't leave it there. It's in really good condition. Again, one side's quite marked, but it plays absolutely fine, and the other side as good as anything I've got, you know. So really good to come up with that one. Couple of songs on here. Give writing credits to Jimmy Page, because he plays on a couple of songs on here. And Viv Prince, the drummer from the Pretty Things, was having a bit of a tough time, behaving quite erratically at the time. So the producer Bobby Graham ended up playing drums on a lot of the songs on here. But yeah, the second album by the Pretty Things came out shortly after the first one. I think only a couple of months after the first one came out, they started making this one. But yeah, real bargain at 10 quid. And that was probably my buy of the day. And you're probably seeing a lot of 60s stuff here. I've been speaking to people on through the comments on YouTube recently, and I've got quite a lot of gaps in my 60s department, and probably not a fair representation of the stuff that I normally buy, but so this is probably why I'm showing a lot of 60s stuff at the moment. Picked up this Iron Buttonfly Ball, again much shown on the vinyl community recently. This is their third album from 1969, San Diego group Iron Butterfly, again very influential on later hard rock and heavy metal groups. A couple of 12-inch singles that I picked up while I was there, and tried to sort of cut down on the 12-inch singles. I've got masses of them, and trying to concentrate more on albums. But this is the perfect indie group. Matt Johnson was the really. This was their third sort of hit they have, their fifth single, I think. This is from about 1984 or 1985, I think, on the Some Bizarre label. And this is a demo copy, gold stamp demo, which was nice. And the labels are quite interesting on this one because it's got the Some Bizarre label sort of a browny purpley colour on that side, and the other side sort of custom with a turquoisey label on that side. I thought that was quite odd. But it's a great song on their Soul Mining album. Okay, the second of the 12-inch singles. This was a really interesting one. I was sort of attracted to the cover and the price. It was only £1. Band are called Whiteout, and the song's called Detroit. And it kind of looked a bit sort of garagey, maybe 90s record, and I was attracted to that as well. Silvertone, which was the Stone Roses label, and they were the sort of the second group after the Stone Roses, guitar group, that was signed to the Silvertone label. And it's a really good, almost Oasis style, got that 60s feel, Britpop. Can see a little bit of later 90s, sort of that Bird style guitar, Teenage Fan Club style possibly on there. But I recommend checking out Whiteout. I mentioned Oasis a second ago, and they actually co-headlined a tour with Oasis in Oasis' early days, and they went on to support the Charlatans and Pulp. So yeah, they've done pretty well for themselves. Did Whiteout. And the last of the bunch, Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders. This is the original pressing of their first album, made in the UK, a Manchester band. Went on to have hits, Wayne Fontana on his own and the Mindbenders separately. And the biggest hit was probably Groovy Kind of Love, which isn't on this album. A Game of Love was also a big hit for them, Pamela Pamela. You probably know those songs from the 60s. And they have a bit of a connection with 10cc, for those people who don't know, because Eric Stewart was in the band originally, and he went on to form 10cc with Graham Gouldman, and they bought the Strawberry Studios in Manchester. Rest is history, really. Godley and Cream joined them, and 10cc. That must be a great band, obviously. So that's a lot from me. I hope you enjoyed watching. Leave a comment if there's anything you want to ask about. Whip through them fairly quickly. See you on the next video soon. Cheers again for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And cheers. See ya.